The new regime in Miami is wasting no time hitting the reset button. We will break down today's wave of cuts by the Dolphins, who officially have moved on from Tyreek Hill, and what it means for the rest of a pivotal offseason on South Beach. The franchise tag window opens up on Tuesday, and some of the biggest name would-be free agents may not hit the market after all. Mark joins us tonight to take a deeper look at some key decisions looming over the next 2 weeks. For now, the Seahawks are still the Super Bowl champs, and their victory parade is not yet over on this show. Derek Hall joins us tonight to talk about the thrill of winning a ring and how Seattle can run it back. Welcome inside with the Insiders. Alongside Judy Batista, I am Tom Pelissero. If you're already sick, by the way, of hearing about the Seahawks being the champs, if you are sick of waking up late at night having nightmares about how your team's season ended, I've got very good news for you. The free agent negotiating window begins 3 weeks from today. So many moves, so close for your team and the other 31, and the Dolphins already getting down to business. They got things started early this morning by making several cuts, including their 8-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Tyreek Hill. This was an inevitable move that takes his $36 million in cash off the books in 2026. At a time that Tyreek is recovering from that serious leg injury, and it's unclear when or even if he'll be ready to play in 2026. If he does, it will not be in Miami. Tyreek now officially is a free agent. The Dolphins also plan to release their veteran pass rusher Bradley Chubb. That move not yet official. Miami could potentially wait to formally release Chubb until March 11th, allowing them to free up more cap space this season. Guard James Daniels, wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikini also officially released. It is a new day in Miami, not a surprise, but what do you feel this says about exactly what the Dolphins plan to accomplish here in the coming weeks?
Well, listen, they are hitting the reset button. They have a new football brain trust. They want to be a draft and develop kind of organization. They were in a salary cap bind, and so this is what happens. This team went for it with big-time veterans at one point, right? They gave up a lot of draft capital for Chubb and for Tyreek Hill, and they got no return in playoff wins out of that. Now, you admire the spirit of going for it. The problem was they didn't have the quarterback situation nailed down the way they thought they had it nailed down with Tua, and so now they rip it up and start over, and this is what happens. And especially in the case of Tyreek Hill, as you mentioned, with the very serious knee injury, you don't even know if he's going to play in 2026. He's about to turn 32. These were inevitable moves for the Miami Dolphins. It is the dawn of a new day, and it is a rebuild in Miami.
Speaking of Tua, too, we talked about this on Super Bowl Sunday. All signs are pointing toward Tua not returning to Miami in 2026, despite the fact that he is fully guaranteed $54 million this season. The trade is a possibility, but it's complicated. A new team wouldn't want to pick up much of Tua's $54 million salary. Also, that would cause about a $45 million dead cap charge to all accelerate and hit their cap immediately. The cleaner option is probably releasing Tua. They would be able to spread nearly $100 million in dead cap over 2 seasons, would end up paying him probably $50 million plus for him to go play for the minimum someplace else. Either way, hard to imagine at this point that Tua is returning to the Dolphins. Major changes and also a situation that leaves them needing a new quarterback as they move forward. Ty also will need another number 1 wide receiver. They got Jalen Waddle, but Tyreek Hill, who has been that guy for so long, released officially today. He posted a lengthy message on Instagram saying in part that he will be back on the field. The Cheetah will be back. Let's welcome in our Mark Ross to talk a little bit more about how things are playing out in Miami. Mark, you always knew you got a new head coach, a new general manager. Inevitably, there are going to be changes. It also seems like this speaks pretty strongly to how this new regime felt about the roster that was in place, and seems like we're just kind of getting started as they rebuild things in Miami.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever you have either a new head coach or a new GM, they want to do things their way, and now you got both of those guys. So, of course, they're looking at what has transpired there in Miami, and as y'all mentioned, no playoff wins, despite these players that they have and the Tyreek Hills of the world, no playoff wins. So when you're looking at, despite what he's done in the past, he's got 3 things against him. He's old, he's injured, and he's cost a lot of money. So when you're looking at that as a new GM, as a new head coach, you're saying, you know what, we can move forward without that. Let's bring in our own players, whether it be free agency or the draft. Of course, it's going to be both. So you're really looking at and talking to ownership saying, we're going to bring in our own guys here. We're going to build this the way we want to build it. We're going to bring it with our personnel, with our people, so that we can move forward and not be handicapped by these contracts. Of course, you're going to have to incur some of that, but let's move on now as opposed to later. So what you're seeing today from the Dolphins is basically just that brain trust saying, okay, with the blessing of ownership, by the way, like this is the way we're going to build this thing in our image with our guys, and we're going to move forward from here.
Taking the pain in the short term, allowing you would hope if you're Miami to get past that sooner than later as you begin, as we've said, a full roster reset. Tyreek Hill, a free agent immediately. For anyone else scheduled to become a free agent, that will happen on March 11th if they don't end up getting tagged. The franchise and transition tag window opens up tomorrow, Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You're seeing, Mark, some of the players, including George Pickens, we expect to get tags. Who else is somebody you're interested to see whether potentially they could be subject to a game of tag?
Well, my guy Kyle Pitts, Kyle Pitts coming out of the draft, I thought he was the best tight end prospect that I had scouted in a long time. Didn't live up to those expectations his first 4 years, and then last year had that breakout year. A couple games where he just completely and absolutely took over and showed why he was taken where he was taken there. But still, if you're Atlanta, you're saying, well, can we really give him this long-term contract right now? So I think the franchise tag for Atlanta is the most sensible way to say, okay, let's see if he can do this another year. Does he have this consistency in him, as opposed to was just the 1 year wonder of Kyle Pitts? So let's see what happens there. Of course, with Michael Penix coming off the injury, a new head coach, new GM, you want as many good players as possible. So let's try to keep Kyle Pitts around, see if he can do it again.
Well, the New York Jets need as many good players as possible, and they have Breece Hall in the building. Remember, they did not trade him at the trade deadline last year, and Breece Hall was surprised and openly disappointed. Remember, they traded Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner. Breece Hall thought he was going to go too. He was not happy that he was not traded. He still put up a 1,000-yard rushing season despite all of the dysfunction on the Jets offense last season. At the time that they did not trade him, Aaron Glenn, the head coach, said, I don't want to trade him. I want him to be here. He's a good player. Well, we will see what they do now. They have lots of cap space at the New York Jets. They could easily afford the $14 million for the franchise tag. Maybe they use the transition tag. That's rarely used, but maybe cost them a few $1 million less. Our own Daniel Jeremiah said it on the Move the Sticks podcast. Like, they need to fill a lot of holes. Breece Hall fills a really important hole for a team that doesn't know what their quarterback situation is going to be.
We know the Colts had a hole to fill a quarterback for a long time. They felt like they had filled it last year with Daniel Jones prior to a couple injuries, including the torn Achilles that he is still rehabbing. This is going to be fascinating to see it, to watch it play out. And not just because several years ago the Giants were dealing with a Daniel Jones-Saquon Barkley tag situation that ended up with Saquon getting tagged, Jones getting an extension. It's also because Daniel Jones wants to be in Indianapolis. The Colts want to work out a deal with Daniel Jones, but the deadline for that is not going to be March 11th. It's probably going to be March 3rd, which is when that franchise tag window closes. The Colts and Daniel Jones representatives have had at least some initial talks about a contract extension. Can they get something done that makes sense for all parties? That's going to determine exactly what direction this goes. The tag would be an option for Daniel Jones if they can't work out a deal. If they get something done with Jones, they do have another player, Alec Pierce, they potentially could tag as well, though ideally they wouldn't have to use a tag on either. Can work out contracts with both of those players. We had other news. Mark Ross, thank you very much. More from you in a little bit here. On the coaching front, earlier today, the Browns have filled their defensive coordinator vacancy. It's Mike Rutenberg. This was a bit of a surprise, but a high-energy assistant trained under Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich, was most recently with Atlanta. Of course, the Browns wanted to retain Jim Schwartz, who was not happy when they hired Todd Monken as the head coach. Monken now ends up going with Rutenberg. The hope and the plan is that they'll keep that same system in place, Jude.
The Las Vegas Raiders are hiring Andrew Janocko to be their offensive coordinator. He is following Clint Kubiak from Seattle, where Janocko was the quarterback's coach. He did such great work with Sam Darnold this season. They also worked together with the Vikings and the Saints. This is the first time that Janocko, though, will be the offensive coordinator. Kubiak, though, is going to be the offensive play caller in Vegas. And on the other side of the ball in Las Vegas, Kubiak has promoted Rob Leonard to defensive coordinator. He was the defensive line coach and the run game coordinator. Leonard has been with the Raiders for 3 seasons and has worked closely with Max Crosby, who posted on social media calling it legend when the Leonard hire was revealed. Crosby's future in Vegas is still unclear. Probably doesn't hurt that he likes this hire. Leonard is also a first-time coordinator, Tom.
A lot of people assume when Clint Kubiak left for Las Vegas, the Seahawks would fill their offensive coordinator job internally, maybe with Andrew Janocko. Instead, they go outside the building, but in the division. Brian Fleury, who's been the run game coordinator and tight ends coach with San Francisco, now set to become the Seahawks' new OC. Fleury had been one of the longest tenured and most trusted assistants for Kyle Shanahan. You know, anybody who lasts that long with Kyle has something going for him. Fleury came in, absolutely, I was told, blew away the interviews with the Seahawks. Mike McDonald going bold once again, bringing Brian Fleury to Seattle. Derek Hall's still in Seattle, at least for now, and he is a Super Bowl champion on that team. Coming up after this, he's going to be with us in just a little bit to talk about exactly how Seattle put a second Lombardi trophy in the case. They just won Super Bowl 60, so which teams had the biggest Super Bowl window heading into the 2026 season? Steve Weitz and Bucky Brooks will be here to tell you that and a lot more right after this on The Insiders. Lombardi Trophy number 2 headed to Seattle thanks to the Seahawks win in Super Bowl 60 just 8 days ago, but somehow feels like 8 months ago. Seahawks have packed a whole lot of celebrating, a parade, a bunch of coaching staff changes, a lot in those days since. And we are now counting down the days to free agency, the draft, and Super Bowl 61. Who is going to be the winner? Not love. It's going to be Valentine's Day in 2026. Welcome back to the Insiders. Tom Pelissero, Judy Batista, joined now by Bucky Brooks and Steve Weitz. Bucky's got an article right now, NFL.com/Scouts Notebook, looking at some of the teams with the biggest Super Bowl windows. There it is, entering 2026. Bucky, what's the first one?
Oh, look, we got to talk about the Chicago Bears because there's a lot of excitement in the Windy City about Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson getting together. And when you think about the formula and the recipe to get into the Super Bowl, it's about head coach, quarterback, and then a defense that can make it happen. And when you think about the head coach and quarterback, they've been able to get it together. Caleb Williams last year was terrific, particularly at down the stretch. And with the weapons around him, they're good to go. And then with Dennis Allen creating turnovers at an alarming rate, this team is going to be there because the personnel is going to be upgraded. That gives them a shot.
Hey, Bucky, I'm with you on the Bears, but let's reset for a second. We're not discounting the Seahawks Super Bowl window being open. It's wide open with the youth and the development and the culture that they've established there. But let's go to a challenger, and that's the Chicago Bears. I'm right there with you, but Caleb Williams, you know, the quarterback, he's an emerging talent, and as you saw, Bucky, this is why I like them. As the season went on, he got better handling situational football, down and distance, protecting the ball, and really rallying his teammates. Plus, they've got so much young talent at the skill positions, some young and a good mix of youth and veteran experience on the offensive line. Like you also mentioned, Bucky, on defense, they got steadily better throughout the season. Now, they may need a charge of youth into some spots on that defense, but the Bears, that is a team that's got a wide open window for several years.
All right, Bucky, we will probably always wonder what would have happened in the AFC Championship game this year if Bo Nix were healthy and they didn't have to play a backup who hadn't played in like 2 years. It seems like the Broncos window is wide open right now, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's wide open. And some would say that if Bo Nix plays, maybe they are the representative in Super Bowl 60. But that's not how it played out. But still, Sean Payton, Bo Nix being magical last season. 7-game winning drives, being able to get it done in a variety of different ways. And this offense has so much meat on the bone left to pick. I think more up-tempo, more playmakers, the running game continue to evolve. That's going to help them. But I like Vance Joseph and this defense also getting it done. They harass the quarterbacks relentlessly, and that's not going to change, which is why the Denver Broncos are going to be in the mix to be there in Super Bowl 61.
Yeah, absolutely, Bucky. I mean, we're talking about teams with young quarterbacks and emerging young quarterbacks who will continue to develop. We know the Broncos, they've got a good offensive line. A little bit, I'm going to talk about some free agents they may want to add that could get them to the next step. But we know that defense is magic. You know, they don't have a lot to do necessarily to improve that defense. It's young personnel. You got Pat Surtain, you got Talano Hufanga on the back end. You got edge rushers, Nick Bonito on the front end. So all three levels are really good. And again, I think with some infusion of explosive playmaking talent on the offensive side, Bucky, that will help Bo Nix and will have Denver right there in the mix. But they still have to get through that tough AFC West.
All right, Bucky, we know Matthew Stafford's going to be back for another season, so they got to work out the contract there. But with a quarterback at that age, even an NFL MVP, how open is the Rams window in your mind?
No, it's still wide open. We've seen these aging quarterbacks get better and better with time, and Matthew Stafford certainly represents that. And with Matthew Stafford coming off an MVP season, what we saw is his ability to put this offense on his back. And even though they have the running game with Cameron Williams and Blake Corum, they can throw it outside the Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. It's the quarterback that makes it go. For this window continue to be open, though, the defense is going to have to play better, particularly when they got into the postseason, got a little big for them in the championship game. Look for them to atone for that disappointing performance as they're motivated to go back to Super Bowl 61.
Wow, Bucky, a wide open window, a couple more years for Matt Stafford. That'd be exciting news for the Rams.
Yeah,
but I'm going back to the youthful talent of the quarterback. I'm going back to the AFC, this time to the AFC South, and that's the Houston Texans. Now they've got question marks. C.J. Stroud, is he going to get over the hump? He's got to get better. This offensive line has got to get better. But this defense is going to carry him, and what they've done in terms of the way of when they've extended some of their key young players, they're not going to run into significant cap issues when they've got to pay Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud, because they've taken care of Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie and Nico Collins, some of their key players. So if they get this offensive line together and C.J. Stroud kind of gets his head together, gets his confidence back, the Houston Texans Super Bowl window is going to be there for a very long time.
They built it through the draft, the NFL Draft 2026, 66 days away. Bucky, we're going to get some thoughts from you on that in just a little bit. Steve, also stick around, because after this, we're looking ahead at something that's just 21 days away. That is the opening of free agency, the negotiating window at least. Who are some of the biggest names, and where could they land? Steve and Bridget Condon with some predictions right after this on The Insiders.
Miami Dolphins released five-time All-Pro wide receiver Tyreek Hill on Monday. It was the expected move as the Dolphins begin their roster reset under a new football brain trust. Hill is also coming off a very serious knee injury. It's unclear still if he will even be able to play at any point in 2026, although he did post on social media his thanks to the organization and to the city, and he said he would be back. The Dolphins also released, or are preparing to release, pass rusher Bradley Chubb. Not a surprise there either. They restructured his contract last season. Chubb led the team with 8.5 sacks in 2025. He missed all of 2024 with a torn ACL, but in 2023 he had 11 sacks and 6 forced fumbles. He has 48 career sacks, so there should be plenty of interest in Chubb on the open market, and this is certainly not expected to be the last big move by the Dolphins in advance of free agency, Tom.
Free agency just 3 weeks away. The negotiating window opens up on March 9th. The signing period, March 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Free agency frenzy here on NFL Network. A very special edition of The Insiders on Sunday, March 8th as well. We'll have you covered wall to wall, and at least some of that coverage will be coming from our studio in LA, where our Bridget Condon and Steve Weitz are standing by right now with some thoughts on some of the big names we're going to be talking about, guys.
All right, let's start with the Super Bowl winning MVP, Kenneth Walker III. It's a really interesting situation. When you think about Seattle, they run the ball third most in the league this past season. 50% of their plays, they are calling a run play, okay? You have Kenneth Walker, who had a career high in terms of scrimmage yards with over 1,300. He only rushed for about 60 a game during the regular season, but this guy took off in the postseason. More than 100 yards on the ground per game in the postseason, won the MVP. Obviously, that is due in part to Zach Charbonnet tearing his ACL in January. Now this is where things get complicated, because when you look at the running back market, Steve, you know this well, you've covered this league. You think of guys like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. They've gotten some of those massive second contract situations, but it's been tough for guys like Josh Jacobs and other running backs to get those big second deals. So now Seattle's in a situation where, are you going to let the MVP of the Super Bowl just walk out of the building, especially when you have Zach Charbonnet hurt with an ACL? Probably for about 9 to 10 months is the typical time that you're out with an ACL. So he's going to miss time this season. They're in a difficult situation, but it would be very hard for them, because of what Kenneth Walker did this postseason, to let that guy go.
I think it'd be hard for them to let him go, even if they franchise him. That number's pretty high, $14 million. And like you said, though, the money would be interesting because he does split carries some of the time. So I'm going to go with a running back who does split carries, who's going to be a little bit lesser on the budget, but could be more impactful. And that's Falcons running back Tyler Algier, a free agent. I think he would be an ideal fit with the Denver Broncos. Here's the comp. Here's someone, Tyler Algier, remember as a rookie, rushed for 1,000 yards, but the Falcons, they went out and got Bijan Robinson, too good to pass on. But if you put Tyler Algier in the backfield with R.J. Harvey, Bridget, you've got Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara in Sean Payton's system. Think about what those two did together down in New Orleans. That's what an Algier-Harvey tandem could look like. Algier is a touchdown maker, too. 8 rushing touchdowns, someone with a great nose for the ball. So I think, again, for what they might want to do in the physical aspect of the run game to help out Bo Nix, Algier would be a perfect fit with the Broncos.
Okay, now let's look at some of the guys on the defensive end. Khalil Mack, he's a really interesting situation. He's a guy who has a detailed resume. He's obviously been a 9-time Pro Bowler. He's been Defensive Player of the Year. The one thing that is not on his resume is a Super Bowl win. And I've gotten to know him pretty well covering the Chargers here in Los Angeles. And you know how badly guys want to add that, especially if you're thinking about the Hall of Fame. You want to have that Super Bowl ring on your resume. Now, Khalil Mack has had an interesting career in terms of he spent 4 years where he was with the Raiders. He spent 4 years in Chicago, and then he just finished his 4th season in with the Chargers. So it could be a perfect situation where you do 4-4-4. All right, let's move back and go to a new team if you want to break it up evenly. This is a guy that can still compete. When it came to the postseason, the first game, the only game the Chargers played this postseason, Khalil Mack had the most snaps that he had all season. So he is a player that they have confidence in, and he can still play at a high level. 5.5 sacks this past season. Now, is this a situation where he sees Mike McDaniel now with the Chargers and thinks, okay, maybe this is our time with Justin Herbert, and finally they get over the hump? Or it could be a situation where he says, let me head back to Chicago, where I have a lot of familiarity. They need help in terms of pass rush. It's going to be a really interesting situation, and it kind of feels like it's up to Khalil at this point of where he wants to go.
Or he could join his DC Jesse Minter in Baltimore, and
that's
they absolutely could use a pass rusher right there. I want to go back, speaking of Baltimore, to the offensive side of the ball. Isaiah Likely, the tight end who, the Ravens, they cast an extension to Mark Andrews, the other tight end. I think Isaiah Likely would be a perfect fit with the Washington Commanders. He won't have to move. He can just go right down the highway and go to Washington, because the one thing we saw with Jaden Daniels as a rookie was he liked to go to the tight end. Zach Ertz was his number 2 receiver. You get a versatile and younger route runner like Isaiah Likely, who's actually emerged as a pretty solid blocker. He could be a real helpful asset to that offense. And since we're talking about guys who catch the ball, one of the intriguing wide receivers, Bridget, that's going to be on the free agent market is Alec Pierce, the deep threat with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they're going to try to keep him, but there could be a really intoxicating market for him. Is he a Jamar Chase $45 million a year guy? No. But he could be $30 million plus. And Buffalo Bills, rearrange a couple contracts. You got to get some people to open up this offense, and Alec Pierce is the best downfield threat in the NFL, averaging more than 21 yards per reception. He's somebody, again, you open that thing up to Buffalo with Josh Allen, it'll clear some stuff out underneath. Alec Pierce is going to be a very intriguing free agent to watch.
Yeah, Tom, we talk about the NFL offseason doesn't really ever stop. We could sit here for the next 3 weeks. We probably will, and let you know all the different reasons why X and Y should go to this team or that team. 23 days we have left until free agency, and Steve and I are going to continue telling you why these teams should select certain players.
Well, there certainly is going to be some spending power. Thank you guys out there with the salary cap projected to be upwards of $300 million for the first time. Some teams sitting on absolute mountains of cap space, including the Titans, the Raiders, the Chargers, surprisingly on that list, as well as we welcome back our Mark Ross to the conversation with Judy Battista and me, Tom Pelissero. Mark, as you look at that list of the teams with the most spending power, who's catching your eye that might make some noise here in a few weeks?
Yeah, right, those three teams that are clearly rebuilding. You mentioned the Chargers, like, oh, wow, playoff team there. But I'm looking at the Commanders right there, who 2 years ago, of course, made it to the NFC Championship game last season, the big off season, getting Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuels. A lot of high hopes that, oh, here's the year. And then, of course, it fell apart this year. Jaden Daniels with the injury. So what will they do this off season with all that cap space, and how will they address most of their issues, most of that on defense, but still need some playmakers on offense as well, offensive line. So despite making it to the NFC Championship game 2 years ago, the high hopes of the big offseason signings last offseason, still a lot of holes there that the Commanders saw this year with that disappointing season. So it'll be very interesting to see what GM Adam Peters does here with that cap space to build around that guy right there, Jaden Daniels, and if they can get back to contention once again.
All right, let's look at the teams on the other side of the coin. These are the teams in the worst salary cap situation. They got a lot of work to do just to get under the salary cap. Chiefs at the top, Vikings, Cowboys, Bills, Jaguars. Certainly the Chiefs are at the top by quite a margin there. All right, Mark Ross, which of these teams are you keeping an eye on?
I mean, that's low-hanging fruit, right? To see the Chiefs at the top, but then so much, like, I couldn't believe it when I saw the salary cap numbers. Like, is this for real right here? I mean, of course, they've had this success there in Patrick Mahomes and whatnot, but to be that far over the cap, they're going to have to do some serious restructuring of deals, number one. They're going to have to make a lot of cuts there. Jawan Taylor, I'm looking at you. The restructuring there is maybe Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones will restructure their contracts there. They have their own free agents there. They'll have to re-sign there, and Travis Kelce, if he's coming back, Leo Chenal, Brian Cook. But so they're going to have to, GM Brett Veach there is going to have to do a lot of manipulating and restructuring and cutting of contracts to get underneath the cap there. And it's really shocking to see, 2 years ago, winning the Super Bowl and now, missing the playoffs. And where is this organization? Talking about Washington, can they get back? Will the Chiefs have enough ammunition to get back as well, and enough good players to get back to contend at the top of their AFC?
Patrick Mahomes' current cap number for 2026 scheduled to be $78 million, though they can tip over the piggy bank, convert his salary to a signing bonus, and make up a lot of that deficit that they need to already. Mark, great stuff as always. Thank you very much. So much more to come on this show. The NFL Combine presented by Microsoft Copilot, where a dream that starts small can get big, and a name that's unknown can become the future. Next is here, the 2026 NFL Combine, February 26th through March 1st on NFL Network and streaming with NFL Plus. Subscription required for NFL Plus. Visit plus.nfl.com for terms. Names you got to know prior to next week from our Bucky Brooks. Take a look at the top 5 running backs in this class. No surprise, checking in at number 1, Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. Welcome back to the Insiders. Tom Pelissero, Judy Battista, Mark Ross, and the aforementioned Bucky Brooks. Bucky, we probably don't need a lot of explanation why Jeremiah Love is number 1, but put this in context for me. We've seen some really good running backs come through the process. How good a prospect is he?
Look, I think you have to put him right in that same category as Bijan Robinson from the Atlanta Falcons. And the reason why I talk about that, in my notes I have down, total package. He can run it. He can come downhill. He can get to the edges. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can ground it out if he needs to. But he also has the big playability. He is everything that you want in a running back, which is why the league is excited about him entering the league.
Yeah, for sure, Bucky. He was super exciting for me to watch as well. But I'm going to go with his teammate there who jumped out too, Jadarian Price. I mean, he gets in the game, you're like, well, he's like Love Light almost. You know, the vision is there. The quick cuts are there. He has explosiveness to the edges. And then what also got me excited was his kickoff ability. He led the nation with kickoff returns. He had 2 touchdowns of 100 yards, and they weren't some fluke. You know, a lot of times returners just run through straight lanes. He's got the vision, the elusiveness, and the explosiveness as a big play threat in the kickoff game, and we've seen that with the increase in kickoff returns over the past year with the new kickoff rules, that he'll add that as well. That pass game there, limited touches there as a receiver, so he'll be worked out thoroughly at the combine and a workout to see how those hands are, because Love gets all those touches in the pass game, but keep an eye on him as well.
All right, Bucky, let's take a look at your top 5 edge rushers going into the combine. Absolutely no surprise, Reuben Bain Jr. from the Miami Hurricanes is number 1 on the list. You've actually got 2 Hurricanes among this top 5. How did you arrive at this 5, Bucky?
You know, it's really tough because they're all different type flavors of pass rushers in this draft class. You have the power rushers. Reuben Bain would fall into that category. You got the speed and quickness. David Bailey would be that. You have the relentless guys. Messidor would fall into that. And I think in this league, it's not necessarily a Myles Garrett, but they're a bunch of productive worker bees that are going to get it done. And as more teams are beginning to use rotations, 6, 7, 8 guys throwing multiple bodies at the quarterback, you can find ways to use these guys, even though you have to expend a first-round pick on someone who's not a generational talent as an edge rusher.
Man, it was super fun to watch those Miami guys, man. They bring it every snap, man. You just don't see that too often, Bucky, as you know. But another guy who I thought fitted in that, I know it's a thankless job putting your top 5 together there, but my man R. Mason Thomas of Oklahoma should be in there. I know you'll get him there come draft time. He'll be maybe 2 or 3 there for you. But, I mean, you talk about a guy who's a little bit undersized but plays much bigger with his size. Crazy explosive coming off the edge, and also with his power, relentless, never gives up on a play. He's always bringing it. And when I watched him, I just kept having flashbacks of a Robert Mathis type from the Colts there, an undersized guy who plays much bigger and more powerful than what would seem. So when you look at a guy like him who just brings it every snap, have to find the right role for him, but he's going to be a guy that teams are going to really love.
Mark, Bucky, thank you both very much. A lot more from you guys in the 66 days we now have remaining until the 2026 NFL Draft. A lot of insiders between now and then as well. We are live 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, right here on NFL Network. You can also catch full episodes at NFL Plus. See us on YouTube. There's a podcast. We're really everywhere.